Let us explore a Q&A followed by meditating like a Jedi. A question was asked, how do you meditate when you are sick? As one who is chronic ill with multiple disabilities, this question is right up my alley. The individual wrote, quote, I'm just recovering from a cold and I have a cough that's lingering. Every time I try to breathe deeply, I end up coughing and hacking and breaking out of whatever focus I was in. Following the breath is the main way I know how to meditate, so I'm not sure what to do. Do you have any recommendations? Close quote. Yes, I do. So we'll start with the first bit. I'm just recovering from a cold. Well, my friend, I wish you the best of health and a speedy recovery. Allow me to remind you of what I learned the very hard way. That is to respect your limitations, be they temporary or permanent. When your body is tired, when your throat is scratchy, when your sinuses are achy, when your lungs are congested, listen to your body. Rest, rest. There is no medicine like rest. There are times when I'm too physically exhausted to sit up and meditate. So what I do is I have one of those, I lay up in bed with my back pressed against either the bed if you have a reclining bed, or the back of your chair if you have an easy chair, or just the wall. That'll work too. And I gently direct my gaze out the window and I just take a very, very passive approach. Although when our lungs are congested and we're coughing, we cannot do deep breathing. But there's good news. The Buddha never instructed deep breathing exercises. Many people practice pranayama, but the Buddha did not teach that. So that's good. The Buddha did not teach meditation as a focus, but rather meditation as a metronome. And to explain this in further detail, I'm going to subject you to a visual aid. And tap button 9 on the good old OBS. All right, there is a lot of misinformation about meditation. I have found in my own personal journey that that misinformation is dispelled when we view the topic of meditation through the metaphoric lens of neuroscience. So consider, if you will, this illustration of a cross-section of the human brain. When we actively focus or actively analyze, we exhaust our dorsolateral and medial prefrontal cortex, which can result in us presenting with symptoms of depression, no less triggering our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression. Well, if we're not supposed to focus on our breath, then what are we supposed to do with our breath? Well, the good news is that neither the amygdala nor the prefrontal cortex constitute the entirety of our central nervous system. Consider, if you will, our spinal cord. Its fancy name is the nexus of our autonomic nervous system. It has two subdivisions, which we will discuss momentarily. But when we cooperate with our, well, let me rephrase this. When we when we take a break from our habit of actively competing against our autonomic nervous system and instead passively cooperate with that same autonomic nervous system, the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala is calmed, and the empathy of our anterior cingulate gyrus is gently stimulated, which is really, really good. So let's explore how this works with a little more detail. Let's begin with mindfulness, which is the seventh fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, the seventh tool in the Buddha's tool chest. Every time we inhale, even if it is a weak, superficial, inelegant inhalation, we are still wired to automatically access the first aspect or the first component of our autonomic nervous system, located in the middle bit of our spine and described as the sympathetic nervous system. This bad boy has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way. It has evolved to help us to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination. We have evolved to notice all manner of phenomena, from the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. The rule of thumb is as follows. Every time we feel our body breathe in, wherever we feel that, whether it's in our nose, whether it's in our chest, wherever we see our body display evidence of inhalation, regardless of how smooth or rough or deep or shallow or beautiful or ugly or pleasurable or painful it is, we silently and mentally recite the verb watch. Let's turn our attention now to meditation. What do we do with all that stuff that we noticed? Every time we exhale, we are already wired to automatically access the second aspect of our autonomic nervous system. Described as our parasympathetic nervous system, it has two nexi, in the adduct and the basement of that exact same spinal cord. These two extremes help us to relax to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel a little bit less stressful, a little bit less permanent, a little bit less defining, and even a little bit less solid. The rule of thumb is that every time we feel our body exhale, regardless of how deep or shallow or smooth or rough or pleasurable or painful or beautiful or ugly that exhalation may be, we silently and mentally recite the verb rest. Now, we can fall into the hyperbolic trap of thinking, I'm not breathing at all. But then you'd be dead. You would be blue, and you would be rotting, and your kitty cat would be eating your face. And since that is most likely not the case, there is some respiration occurring. Once again, remember, the Buddha did not demand deep breathing exercises of his followers. Similarly, our job is not to actively focus upon our breath, but to treat our breath the way a piano student treats a metronome. When we peripherally notice an elation, silently and mentally recite the verb watch. When we peripherally notice exhalation, silently and mentally recite the verb rest. Do not push yourself. When we push ourselves, when we are sick, when we are exhausted, we could inadvertently cultivate what the psychologists describe as a clinical aversion to meditation. So when I find myself incapacitated, I lay up in the manner I described, with my back against a wall or a bed or an easy boy or a sofa, and I passively gaze out the window at the sky and the trees and the birds. And I live in Southern California, so also the lizards. And as I breathe in, I silently and mentally recite the verb watch. As I breathe out, I silently and mentally recite the verb rest. When my eyes can no longer do that, when my neck can no longer do that, give myself permission to rest. In the Buddha's second meditation manual, he taught that meditation could be practiced walking, sitting, or even lying down. The older the Buddha got, the more time he spent in walking and laying meditation. He gave himself permission to work within the parameters of his ability. He taught that the more we practice mindfulness and meditation, more we cannot help but notice impermanence. Not only impermanence of the seasons that come and go, not only impermanence of the moon that waxes and wanes, not only impermanence of the sun that rises and sets, not only impermanence of our chest that swells and sinks, but impermanence of our very body, impermanence of our health. And so we can give ourselves permission to be flexible in our approach. That our life is full of variables. Our physical stamina is a variable. Our health is a variable. And rather than pretend that changes in our health and changes in our stamina are somehow an indictment, instead, we can see it merely as an inconvenient lesson in impermanence. Having completed our opening Q&A, I'd like to shift gears. It is General Leia Organa's early Saturday morning. At least it is here in Southern California. Let us meditate like a Jedi. After about 30 seconds of housekeeping, this is the Dzogchen Semde Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have harnessed my autistic special interests as well as my ADHD hyperfocus to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I can become your personal, nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friend. to meditate like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers, just like you. So if you just tuned in and you're on the Tube app, which means you're seeing my face in the visual aids, allow me to direct your attention to the upper right corner of the screen, where the text could remind you that the essence of mindfulness is to silently and mentally recite the verb watch during every time we feel a chest subtly swell as with breath, and that the essence of meditation is to silently and mentally recite the verb rest every time we feel our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale. This is not an animatronic presentation at Disneyland. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist or Taoist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I do tend to check for questions about every 5 minutes or so. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. And, whoopsie, got ahead of myself. In about 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's second session of Q&A, followed by meditating like a Jedi. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.